Stella Assange just said on your show, they're worried he'll die in prison, which he will. So how different is that from what it was done over the years to Viktor Navalny, who everyone is talking about, who was arrested, locked up under fake charges and suddenly dies in prison? He was fine a few days ago, you report. Well, Julian hasn't been fine for some years. Doctors who inspected him are extremely worried.
Yeah.
Julian Assange is the West's version of Navalny. There's no big difference. This appeal is to end a situation where a journalist and publisher who published material handed over to him by a serving United States soldier, Bradley, now Chelsea Manning, who herself has been released when Obama was president. And Julian has now been charged under the Espionage Act by Donald Trump when he was in office. And the extradition order was backed by Priti Patel when she was at the Home Office. And the opposition leader, Keir Starmer, was at the Crown Prosecution Services, made 4 trips to the United States to discuss, one assumes, the Assange trial, and persuaded the Swedes who were prepared to give up on the case, persuaded them not to come to London and interview him here. So all sorts of murky things are going on, yes, but on whose side? Assange has been very clear. The material he obtained from the United States soldier was published not just by him, it was published by the Guardian, by the New York Times, by El País in Spain, by newspapers and magazines in Germany, mainstream newspapers. So why aren't their editors being charged under the Espionage Act? Why only Julian? The fact is, Julian shouldn't really be charged for this. He served time in prison for absolutely nothing on bogus, trumped-up charges. The case is clearly political, and because of that, there shouldn't be an extradition. But the British government and opposition party, the main opposition party, Labour, have been so pusillanimous that instead of putting their feet down and saying, no, he is in this country, we won't let him be extradited, they've gone along with this farce. And the last thing which needs to be reported is that a few days ago, a majority of members of the Australian Parliament in Canberra from all parties voted saying that Julian was an Australian citizen and as such should be handed back to the government of Australia. So what happens tomorrow and day after, we shall see. But I'm not holding my breath.
Okay. And Julian Assange would obviously prefer to go to Australia.
Well, he obviously would prefer to go to the country where he was born and of which he is a citizen, because as Stella Assange just said on your show, they're worried he'll die in prison, which he will. So how different is that from what it was done over the years to Viktor Navalny, who everyone is talking about, who was arrested, locked up under fake charges and suddenly dies in prison? He was fine a few days ago, you report. Well, Julian hasn't been fine for some years. Doctors who inspected him are extremely worried.
Yeah.
Julian Assange is the West's version of Navalny. There's no big difference.
Well, I suppose the UK trusts America's judicial court system more than it would Russia's court process. The US is a democracy. It's led by President Joe Biden, who is roundly respected all over the world. There are significant differences, aren't there, really, between the United States?
Young kids are going all over the states. Young kids are going all over the state, including large numbers of young Jewish kids, calling him Genocide Joe, you've got to go. He's not respected in most parts of the world. He's not even respected in all the EU countries. So to say that
but I think it's safe to say
he's more respected than Putin, obviously.
Yeah. Now,
but in terms of what they do, the time for double standards is now over.
Yeah.
After Gaza, no one accepts any rubbish from the West about we are Democrats, we support genocide, follow us. No one supports that any longer in most parts of the world, including this country where millions have marched now over the weeks. And it's the same with Julian Assange.
Yeah, look, I think we need to not muddy the waters further and compare this to the war going on in Gaza with Israel. We should absolutely, well, okay,
it's not unrelated.
But in this case,
Iraq,
okay.
Iraq,
look, Tariq, first of all, sorry to interrupt you, but we're talking about a case being heard in the High Court, an appeal case. And in that court, there will be no comparisons to what's happening between Israel and Gaza at the moment.
Well, you're a journalist.
It does.
I'm a writer.
Because
we can talk about what we like.
Yes, but we're talking about the merits of what's going to happen in the appeal in the High Court tomorrow. And my question to you on that, and I understand you broadening the story out and using comparisons, but I want to return to what's happening tomorrow and Wednesday. In 2021, the High Court ruled he should be extradited. In 2022, the Supreme Court upheld that decision. Mr. Assange's lawyers asked the European Court of Human Rights to consider his case in 2022, but the court dismissed it without a hearing. What has changed in the High Court hearing this appeal case tomorrow and Wednesday? What has changed about Mr. Assange's case that could merit a different outcome?
Well, nothing has changed, in my opinion. I mean, I think his case has been the same. But the fact is that everyone in the world who is involved in this case in some way, people who hate him, people who like him, whoever, they are perfectly well aware that this is a political case. It has nothing to do with espionage. It has everything to do with press freedoms. And it has everything to do with the First Amendment in the American Constitution, which the American courts do respect and which allows freedom of speech. So using the Espionage Act to put a journalist in prison is very dangerous. It's dangerous for all of you as well. You could be locked up if that is what the United States government decides to do one day. So that is a last appeal to say, to treat this as a political case, to understand that what has happened is effectively a vindictive government wanting revenge, particularly the intelligence agencies who failed that Julian Assange scooped them by publishing these stories in the Western media.
Look, Tariq Ali, thank you so much for speaking to us. I do appreciate your opinion and your point of view, and it's really interesting to get that background before we hear that case in the High Court, the appeal hearing in the High Court tomorrow and Wednesday. Tariq Ali, a political activist, journalist and editor of In Defence of Julian Assange.